Yeah, that's your name.
Squirrels got me.
Big Jim.
Yeah.
Really, 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 really cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
That's good that you think that of it, because that's what deer hunting typically is cold and fun.
Yesterday morning, I'm glassing up on the pass, and I see these deer moving, and I'm like, ooh, there's deer moving. All of a sudden, I just see this person just head down, just hauling ass, wearing shorts and a t-shirt with a pack on. And I'm like, is that Tard? My dad always talks about floating through the woods like the autumn breeze.
So Robert's
when you're
the ghost,
275 pounds, I don't know how you do that, but
the Freightliner. It's just like a creeper. You're just kind of up in the corner watching what's going on down there.
Yeah.
You know.
He's like,
he's up there slapping, pissing all over everything.
Is it warm yet?
How did you know the name of the actor?
That's I know.
Why did you say his name?
Hervé Villechaize.
You know what pert near means.
If you know what pert near means and you live in America, you're a redneck too.
Welcome to the Log Talk Podcast, brought to you by Pert Near Outdoors. All right, that's a wrap. Fun show this week with had a live discussion there on the old Bullhorn and Facebook, and I think we were live on YouTube as well. But I don't know if anybody watches that. So hope you enjoy this. I think we covered some great topics, kind of building on some of the stuff we did last year. We talked about and the things that we actually went out in the field and did, and some of the lessons we learned with some of the things we talked about, but also got into some different things about purchasing trees and seed and buying equipment or renting and borrowing equipment, discussion along those lines. So good stuff there. I want to give a shout out to the Huntworks and Whitetail Company, Hunting Western New York. I hope if you are in the Western New York area that you'll get out to the outdoor show, the what do they call it? The Travel and Sport Expo, Western New York Travel and Sport Expo in Hamburg this weekend. That's running Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you have a chance to go, it's a great thing to take your kids to. So I know I'll be there Friday working with kind of sharing some time, trying to help out Russ a little bit with his Whitetail Company and Hunting Western New York booth. And they just so happen to be right across the way from the Huntworks. So I'll be bouncing back and forth between the two there. Helping both of them out. They've been a huge help to us. We appreciate both of them, both the Dunnigan family at the Huntworks and Russ and his family there with his two companies have been a huge help to us. And that's what makes the world go around, helping each other out. So hope you get a chance to go and do that. I know at the last show I went to with the Dunnigans, they had some awesome show specials on stands and blinds. So I'm sure they'll have the same there, and they'll have that stuff right there with them. So if you come to the show, they'll be able to send you right home with it in the back of your Equinox or your Subaru or your pickup truck, whatever it is that you drive. I hope you don't drive a big diesel truck right now, because you probably don't have the money to buy a box blind. But you could always put a box blind on top of your Honda Civic or your hybrid. That's definitely realistic. So keep your options open, people, and go over to the Hamburg fairgrounds this weekend and have a good time with your wife and kids or just some friends, and go have a beer and check some stuff out. I do know that Woody's, if you're looking for a guide service to use, and for maybe like going up in the Northeast doing something with bear or moose, I think and he does deer as well, but Woody's guide service, I see he's going to be there again. Woody is someone that my family has used for many years. I've never been personally, but my Uncle Tim has been many, many times. My dad's buddy Joel and my grandfather have all enjoyed trips up to Woody's in Maine. Great outfit there, and real class act, and everybody always has a good time and find success chasing whatever it is you're after. So check Woody's out too if you're there. I saw that they were on the list and would highly recommend them. I think that's, and I want to talk Shed Fest. We are, I can't believe we're actually today, the 9th of March, we are 1 month away from the Shed Fest party at Windy Brew. I hope you'll join us April 9th at Windy Brew. If you have not, hold on. If you have not purchased your Shed Fest shirt yet on our website, pertnearoutdoors.com, head over there and check out the shirt. We've been crushing through them pretty good. I've got maybe 4 or 5 left of each size, maybe a few more of the extra larges. I ordered more XLs than anything. So I've got, maybe 20 shirts left, 20, 30 shirts. So get your order in, and I'll get them shipped out lickety split. Some great prizes. I think actually today I see Kafaru is running a sale on the Striker XL pack and a frame. So I messaged with them today. I'm going to take advantage of that sale that they're running and purchase that. I think that'll be something that whoever wins will be very happy with. That pack is badass, and if you are interested in a different pack to put with that frame, you could always just buy a different pack. But I'm just going to go ahead and do that, take advantage of it since that's coming out of my pocket. I would like to maybe save a few shekels, if you know what I'm saying. They were giving me a little bit of a discount, but the discount that they're giving on these packs, since they are trying to do a closeout and try to close some inventory out before they bring a new pack on, I figured I would take advantage of that. So I'll be updating. I need to get some information out there, but that's the grand prize is going to be a Kafaru pack and frame combo, which retail is a little over $700. So great value there, but we've got some other great prizes from others. I've got some stuff that came in from Jeremy at Antler Up and Jim DiAgostino. They both sent me some stuff. So we got some great prizes to give out, as well as all the other sponsors that we have. Everybody's given either gift cards to their brand or physical hard goods. So appreciate everyone's support there. Head over to the website and get your shirt before they're gone. I might do another order. If I run out, I might order up some more shirts, but no promises here. So get yours before they're gone. And I'm going to leave it at that, people. I'm tired, and it's been a long week, but I'm still feeding them, and I hope you are too. So enjoy the rest of your week, and keep feeding them.
I'm a little loopy.
Yeah, that's going to be me on Saturday. I got a seminar I'm doing down in Hamburg, PA, which is all right, except for it's 4.5 hours of driving each way, and then I have a property visit on Sunday. So, yeah.
Aren't you just busy? Oh, the boy without kids, crying wolf. Oh,
yeah,
I know. All right, we're officially live. We got this thing up and running. I'm just going to give it a second here to make sure, but this is some sort of a Festivus miracle that all this is working right now.
I thought we were live a while ago. I thought we were just wrapping it up.
No, you guys, so it's working. Apparently you guys, when you're in the waiting room, you guys can talk, but I can't hear you, which is kind of interesting. But
if I'd have known that, I'd have said a lot more about you.
Yeah, of course.
I wondered why you weren't commenting on the fact that you could actually hear me today.
Yeah, because it's working, and I stopped wondering, Dallas. I think I figured it out. So, can anybody confirm we're up on Facebook before we get too far down the road here?
I can watch it on Facebook in the comments and stuff if you want.
Okay, yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
Yeah. Bullhorn just sent me a notification that join us. So
okay,
I think that means that we're good on the Bullhorn side of stuff too.
That is a good sign. And we're live on Facebook, so we're good to go.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, so Big Jim, you're gonna watch Facebook, see if there's any comments, and handle that back and forth.
Roger.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. This is the Pert Near Outdoors podcast, and we've got a little live Q&A session here talking deer habitat or just property management habitat discussions. And we did a couple of these last late winter and spring, and really enjoyed the conversation, felt there was a lot of good value. So we wanted to get another one of these, and maybe we'll do a couple follow-ups if needed. So if you have any questions, we have 6 questions that we have, about 5 or 6 questions that we pre-assigned that we're going to rapid fire through. And our podcast extraordinaire, Jon Teater, tells me that you need to be between 42 and 46 minutes or else people just don't care. So we're going to try to keep it in that window for the man, the myth, the legend, Jon Teater. So without further ado, we're going to run around the panel here. We have Jon Teater. So Jon, say hello.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
You want me to introduce myself?
Yeah,
no?
please. Quick, though. We don't have a lot of time. We got 41 minutes left.
30. All right. Jon Teater of Whitetail Landscapes out of New York State.
Oh, there you go. That was cute. Uncle Dallas, I'm heading right to left on your radio dial. Uncle Dallas is with us. He is hey, Uncle Dallas. He's a third-generation deer farmer and one of the finest big buck killers I know. So Uncle Dallas is near and dear to all of our hearts here at Pert Near Outdoors. Big Jim is my brother. He is an apprentice land steward. He's learning. Jon Teater has taught him everything he knows about planting food plots with limited equipment. So, Big Jim, say hello.
True statements there.
Yep.
John's been a big help to us in trying to kick our food plots off. So, thanks to John, and Ben obviously has been always in here throwing his 2 cents in, and hopefully we can see what we can do to get started here this spring. So it's good timing for this.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Ben Williams of Old Tin Cup. Say hello.
Hello. Said it all right there, I guess.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do here, we are all from New York. We're all mainly Western New York. Jon is in Central, runs his business, Whitetail Landscapes, working with clients. Now has a podcast out there, Maximize Your Hunt, which I have really fallen in love with. The format is great, and he's got some good content, and recommend everybody check that out. And Ben's doing a lot of cool stuff with his YouTube page, TikTok, which not really a big fan of because I'm like rejecting it. But hey, Ben's living in the TikTok world. So these guys are making a go of doing this stuff with customers and helping help people plan their properties. So they are our experts and helping us answer some of these questions. So without further ado, do you boys want to get ripping?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Let's
Sounds
do
good.
it. All right, so how we're going to handle these questions, instead of going around the horn and giving everybody a chance, if you have something to say it, and we'll just rip through it. And if you don't have value to add to the discussion, just keep yourself on mute. That sounds fair. And then at the end, if we have a little bit of time, maybe we'll answer a couple questions, or else we can take any questions that were given, and we'll do another one of these to follow up, whether it be live or just a side podcast. So first question, where and how do you purchase your trees? So I guess I'll throw that out there. As far as this time of year, a lot of the tree ordering and seedling stuff is starting to happen. You're seeing some of those posts online. So I'm curious from everybody on here what your experience has been purchasing trees, and what you suggest, to find the right place to do that for your property where you are.
I think you can use the state. I've ordered trees from the state, Saratoga Nursery. I think that's a great resource. The prices are reasonable. There's no reason why you wouldn't want to buy local. They have a lot of variety. They sell quick. I think it came up in February, early February. If you didn't get your order in by probably the 5th or 6th of February, don't quote me on the dates, I think you would have missed out on some of the the key offerings that they had there. So I think that's a great opportunity. So I would throw out the state as an option. I personally bought from the state this year some varieties. I have 2 other resources, but I think that's a good option for people.
Yeah, state, and I would look at your local counties. A lot of those have basically access to the same. Mostly in this Finger Lakes region, they all come from Meadowview Tree Nurseries out of Naples. I went to college with Ben right down in there at Finger Lakes, so known Ben for a while, and he actually wholesales most of the trees to the counties in this local area. So those are like Naples local trees that are grown. And then I'm sure they supplement with some from Saratoga, depending on varietals and stuff like that. But that's a great resource. A lot of evergreens I planted from that. Some hybrid poplars, stuff like that were available at one point. So yeah, a lot of good options there. And then I actually got some Hormone this year, so I'm going to try my hand at doing some cuttings here very shortly with knocking some cuttings in and potting some cuttings maybe, and trying to develop a couple of cultivars here at the piece of property at the house so I can get them whenever I need them. So
Okay, what the hell's a hormone? My wife's got them, but other than that, what is a?
Got it right here on the desk, actually.
It's just a rooting hormone.
It's a rooting hormone. It's a basic rooting hormone.
But what is it? I see a.
It's the same thing, Bill. You can't
It
explain.
looks like cocaine.
It's
It's cocaine.
Oh,
for
it's a
the tree roots to
hormone
make them
to
grow.
help it grow. Okay.
Yeah. So the cuttings are taken as a branch.
HGH.
A vigorously growing young stock part of the branch. You dip it in your rooting hormone. It helps that plant, have a better chance of rooting with the hormone there.
See, I'm not the only jackass. I don't know what that is. I've never even heard of such a thing. So we all learned something.
Hormone 3.
Hormone. I love it.
All right, I'm gonna throw this out. Here's a cheap way to make that similar thing, just in a different variety, right? So cuttings. Let's assume it's elderberry or willows or red rose or dogwood, whatever. One option you have, and a good option, and this is a watering / hormonal balancing thing. I've been recommending this to all my clients. Go out, take a 5-gallon bucket, go fill it up with dirt from resident plants that are really, really healthy. Throw it in the bucket. Fill it with water. Hopefully it's not heavy metal water. Hopefully it's softer water. Slurry it up. Take that out. Pour it into a bucket. Just filter it out. So it's just the water. That has a lot of bacteria in it. That's how you get those plants going. It's a simple way to do it. I know people that use leaves off plants. They'll use even invasive plants that are growing very steadily and rapidly for that as a basis. I've been doing that for probably 5 years now because I use the rooting hormone. I think that works for a lot of the plants. But if you don't want to buy it, you don't have anything around, literally take dirt adjacent to trees, dig it up, and do that. And there's a lot of bacteria in that. And that'll create that kind of good bacterial fungal balance that you want in the soil. I do the same thing with apple trees. Been doing that for a long time. That's a little secret that I have. That sounds pretty silly, but it works.
It's awesome. That's a great tip. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're using the local community of bacteria to build your soil life from a plant that literally is going in naked. To Ben's point, makes sense. Naked into the soil. Give it some life. That's how you give plants life.
I just want to dovetail quick, and then Dallas, I want to talk about what we've done with trees. Clippings. So right now is right now a good time to do some of that work with clippings with red osier dogwood in particular, because that's something I missed last year, and I'm thinking about it again as we've kind of gotten a lot of our heavy work done. That I want to start thinking about some other things before we get leaf on. Is this a good time to do that?
Yeah, I'd say before any major bud emergence and stuff like that, you're probably going to see that they're swelling up with the conditions we've had over the last, couple of weeks, especially that 70-degree spike. I know my lilacs were already starting to bud out, so it won't be very long. But yeah, I think you still got some time out there to gather some cuttings for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess the question is, are you going to be able to store them, right? I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to store them? Are you going to cut them and store them? A lot of people, are you going to wrap them in something to store? You've got to think about.
What I was seeing, I feel like last year what I was seeing when I was starting to think about this was a lot of guys were just cutting the ends. I guess cut them on an angle, right? Cut them, and then taking a screwdriver and poking a hole in the ground and sticking them in the ground and just basically just trying to castigate them around the landscape, around the area you want them to just kind of spread them quicker. Is that an effective way to do it or no?
I've never done them this time. I've never stuck them in the ground this time of year because the ground's so hard still.
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, let's say we're waiting until mid-April, like a month from now. Things are softening up a little bit. That was, I don't know where I heard that or saw it. I read something last year. It might have actually been in the Deer Association magazine. I think they may have had an article last year about that. And that's something that you could I feel like really quickly transition areas and get that dogwood growing, and the deer just seem to love it in our area, and it's a quick way to get some decent cover. So that's something I want to try.
I'm not sure
your buds are facing the right way when you stick them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when you cut them at an angle, so, the bottom at an angle, and that gets more surface area. I soak them in a bucket for 24 hours, and then I plug them. Okay. And I'll do what I just told you with my bacterium addition. And, you know, I've done them into ground where it's compacted. Again, these species that you're putting cuttings, any of those, you cannot put them in compacted ground. Any of the species, I don't care what species it is, do not put it in compacted ground. That's the worst mistake you can make.
Okay.
I made that mistake, so learn from me.
Yeah, and also
Sloppy
species selection with
work.
that too. You know, it's huge.
What'd you say, Ben? You guys talked over each other.
So I was saying species selection is key with that too. Like you're not going to probably take an oak branch and, you know, get it to take root very easily. You know, dogwood, willow, like John was saying, stuff like that, you know, roots in pretty regularly. So you just species selection, location, like John said, compacted soils, no good. Red dorsey dogwood will do, you know, wet feet when it's older, but you can't put it in standing water when it's young. You know, just make sure you're matching the situation to the tree or shrub you're using.
Okay.
We
Dallas.
also
Oh,
caught
Jesus.
a comment. We caught a comment on that on Facebook from Kurt. He said cutting and stabbing dogwood in to the ground on the same day also works great. And if you shave down the sides a little bit, I'm thinking like John was talking, cutting at an angle, shaving it down a little gives more ground contact.
Yeah, you start getting xylem flow right off the bat. I mean, that's what you want to do. Yep.
And hormones. Yep.
Give them some hormones.
You want to just talk quick, Dallas, of what we've been doing, and have you ordered our trees yet? Because you're like the guy that does that.
Yeah, March 4th was the deadline for ordering trees this year. So if you're listening to this, as you're a little late on the county, I did look into the state briefly this year because I saw a post, so I clicked on it. But where you have to pick them up is out in central New York in John's territory, I think somewhere. So most people are going to be better off going to the county, I think. So we've used Genesee and Erie in the past. This year I went with Genesee. You order them in February and early March, and you pick them up in early April when they're ready. They'll send you a flyer. What our strategy has been just to buy bare root seedlings because it's the most cost effective, and it's takes a little longer to get them to grow, and you might have a little bit higher failure rate with them, but they're so cheap that it's worth doing. And we've learned a lot of the ways to get the trees to live. The first lesson we learned was that you have to control the weeds no matter what kind of tree you put in the ground, especially if you have grass like we do. We've tried to plant them in areas with canary grass, and that stuff will just smother out any kind of tree that you try to plant near. So with we plant a lot of conifer trees, spruce, pine, those sort of things. And what we do is we take half a tire off the old bunk pile, spray the weeds, just open up the soil a little bit, drop the tree in, and then put a tire over it. And that kind of helps mark it, and it also helps suppress the weeds a little bit. And then on the first 2 years, we just come by like 2 more times and spray Roundup around it just to control the weeds. And once you do that for about maybe 3 sprayings, usually that tree will take root and go. The conifers, you don't have to put tubes on them or anything. The hardwood trees, you do have to put a tree tube and a stake. That's the only way they'll survive, because otherwise they'll either get picked off by deer or they'll just collapse, or you might run them over with a mower or a sprayer or something like that, because you can't see them as soon as the vegetation gets up around them. So
Are you mulching around?
No, we're doing minimal, pretty much minimal as possible.
Yeah.
We're just doing, like I say, on the conifers, we're barely doing anything. Just spray a little bit to control the weeds and put a tire over them, and that seems to help too.
Yeah,
the tire is just a way it helps to be able to see it, especially when they're very young. If you're driving around with a 4-wheeler or a tractor or something, you tend to see that tire and that little dead spot around it from the weeds being killed, and that just helps keep alert that they're there. So our strategy is quantity, so that's why we're buying the young cheap trees, and we're doing as little as possible as far as investment to get them going, but we've had pretty good luck.
Yep. And we went for a walk. We were looking for sheds Sunday, and the amount of cedars that we've got that must be like maybe 2 or 3 years old that are like really looking promising is very exciting. A side hill that was old pasture goldenrod that is now, littered with pine trees and has a lot of, good hemlock and cedar coming up as well. Like it's going to be awesome, but it takes time, but it's worth it. And it's a fun process to go through. So, all right, good stuff there. I think we're good on number one. I think we hammered that pretty good.
Yeah, one more.
Oh, Ben's got one.
Wayne County is still open till March 11th. I just looked it up. So if you want to drive out to Wayne County and get some trees, there's sales still going on until the 11th.
Oh, that's good info. And you don't have to be a resident, correct?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Go on the Wayne County website.
Okay, sweet.
They don't care. They'll take your money.
Yeah.
One more thing with that, Billy, too, is we also use Trigger's tree nursery. So Trigger collects acorns, apple seeds, whatever else he can, and he just plants seeds in solo cups and grows seedlings in his garage in the window in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
He gives them a year or whatever to get going, and then we transplant those seedlings. So that's an even cheaper and easier way to get going on it. You definitely can spend a lot of money on trees, but you don't have to. And that's one thing where we've decided that we're going to grow trees without spending any more money than we have to. It's better spent other places. So that's all.
Yeah, and I'll just add one thing I would suggest for anybody, and I like buying rooted trees rather than non-rooted or in this case we were talking about cuttings. My suggestion, at least for everybody, is you plant the amount of trees. There's two ways. You can overwhelm a property, right? That's one option, which is not a bad option. Or you can underwhelm and overmanage. I have a tendency now to overmanage, and Billy, you brought some tree tubes from me, right? I got my tree tubes. It's an ex-client of my ex-client. It's a client that I worked on. They're my source of tree tubes now, and I'm getting them for hardly anything. And I did my total investment today when I was driving back home. I'm thinking, okay, what do I have in each tree? What used to cost me probably cumulatively with a tube and a stake and the planning, I was at like $10. I've managed to get it myself right around with, from the source plus my stakes. I'm getting my stakes for 35 cents, and I'm $1 in for my tube. I'm 40 cents in for, I'm like $2 in. And so what I would say is, I've been able to manage, cut it down, do it on the cheap, be innovative, try to think of, there's options where you can hedge plants to make cages. You can just try to just be innovative and think about how you can do it out of necessity, how to do things as cheap as possible. That would be my recommendation for everybody. And I would do less rather than more and manage more. That's my strategy. There's nothing wrong with what Dale suggested whatsoever. That's my take. And I would recommend that people consider that, because tree plantings in the design process are literally like, unless it's like a barren desert, like an open field, it is like, I don't start there. I'll design in, I have like a process. I have a template tool that I use, and I'll give you 50 options for trees, 50 options. So out of those 50 options, you may do 2 or 3 of those. And I think that's good enough. I think people put a lot of emphasis on tree plantings, and I guess if you're doing a field conversion, have at it. Most of us aren't. So, just my recommendation there.
I like it. All right.
All right. That was mine.
Yeah, good. Moving along to number 2, recommendations on seed and where to purchase it. So this is kind of thinking about those spring plantings and even getting into later in the summer for your fall stuff. I wanted to kind of get opinions and ideas from everybody on what you've used, what you like, what you might steer people away from. I think that's just as important. We've talked a bunch on here about seeds and different opinions. So I'll open that up for discussion. What is your, I guess let me define this a little quicker. What's your preferred source for seed, I guess, is where I'll start, and then, see where the conversation goes from there. So I'll open that up to whoever wants to grab that first.
I'm south of Rochester here, and I use the old Hemlock Agway. They typically have just about anything you want, mix it up for you. They have some pre-mixed blends. You can just walk in and buy it. But they can pretty much, as long as they can get their hands on it, they can get it for you. So that's what I've been doing the last few years myself.
Yeah, I guess the majority of the stuff I've been mixing myself the last couple of years. It's like John said, when you start looking at this stuff and doing it for years and years and years, you start breaking it down to where you can get it for, your best bang for your buck. And looking at the species that you want in your mixes and whatever it might be for your conditions. Big things is, I guess, read seed labels. Look for issues with noxious weeds, bad weed seeds. Sometimes people knock on coating. However, you need inoculant for some of the clover species and stuff like that. And then there's good options through the NDA seed program. That's another good benefit for being an NDA member. I've got corn coming this year just because it's about that time for rotating some of my stuff, and corn's fitting into the rotation process for me. But yeah, I think just, make yourself a more educated buyer when you're looking for, what varietals you're looking for, and, don't be afraid to shop around a little bit. And then with everything working with clients, I'm sure John's seen it too. You'll have a client for every seed company just about that's used it or tried it. Some love them, and then you'll turn right around the next property and they'll hate them. So everybody's going to have pluses and minuses, and most of the time it just goes into site selection and soil prep and just doing your steps right. So yeah, I guess that's my quick take on it.
I was definitely the type of guy that would just walk into your local sporting goods store and buy whatever looked great on the shelf till I met Jon. So that's kind of what we've been doing over here, is trying to actually pick out the seeds you want and not just go to the store and buy a big bag of something and spread it. So, trying to get your soil better and whatnot, but not just buying an over-the-counter bag of seed that, I never looked at the freaking specs on them or nothing. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I looked at the picture on the bag and I was like, man, that looks like it'd be good. But, since we met you guys, it's been more of trying to focus on what we're doing. And, you go to an Agway or something like that can mix it up for you, and you're going to have better results, I think.
Yeah, I guess for me, I've gone back and forth on this. So I have a bunch of clients using a certain distributor that I use personally. And we do bulk buys, so it's pretty inexpensive. I'm averaging in seed cost per acre. See, because to me, it's all like, what's the return on investment? What's the expense? I'm anywhere between $75 to $100 an acre. That's kind of where I'm at for expenses. And then I've got natural amendments that I'm using. And so I'm trying to keep my budget to about $150 an acre. That's kind of what my budget is on an annual basis. That includes gas. So I'm looking at like that. I would say seed sources. I've been using Seedway for some of my blends. They're a great resource. That's something I recommend. Most of the clients that are local to me connect through my Seedway distributor. That's a great option. I've used Merit Seed. Actually, because seed prices are going up, I just went into my local Agway and I bought I actually bought their whole rack. I just bought everything they had, all their clover. I bought everything because I saw the prices tripling, and I said, well, I'll go. They don't, they're not paying attention. So here's your hack. Go out and buy every bit of seed that you can because the prices are going to be definitely increasing over the next couple months, along with fertilizer. And I did a post on that the other day. But I would definitely suggest that you buy like buckwheat. I got it $1 a pound. It's $75 for what I was getting at that point. So yeah, I'm trying to think what I just spent on it. Actually, I didn't buy buckwheat. I'm trying to think what I bought in my blend just recently. I don't know. It's on a spreadsheet, but go cheap. Like, don't go crazy over this food plot stuff. We put too much focus on this stuff. Like, that's just so supplemental, and it's not a focus. But like, again, match your soil type to the type of plants you're growing. If you're in clay soil, think about things that do well, deep tap roots, things that are going to give you production. I just worked on a property where it's very like heavy clay soil, so focusing on plants that do well in those type of soils. So matching again the soil texture and type to the type of plants that you're growing. That would be a recommendation for anybody. Reference guys like myself and Ben for those resources. We can help you get there, because it's a little more contextual than just talking about where's your distributor, who are you using. Like, let's think about like, what's your soil like? What plant does well in that soil? What does my soil not have? Like, there's like 17, 18 nutrients that are required for your seeds to grow in the soil well. We focus on NPK. Like, we got to stop. It's a bigger discussion than that. Like, we got to educate the public. So, let's think let's think a little bit deeper about these things. So seed distributor, the resources that we're working with, the size of seed, the quality of seed, and all that stuff, it's pretty much average. You're not going to buy a better seed source from another company. To Ben's point, coatings and those things, those could be critical. That could really help if you have poor soil. You got to, people not knock on that stuff. I think that's absurd. I think it's actually has a lot of value because I think people don't do enough to their soil to help balance it and to have that nutrient, place like I was talking about. You've got this naked seed going in the ground. We want to clothe it. We want to make it feel good. We want it to grow. It's like, so we need to help that biome kind of establish. So seed coating's helpful. Don't listen to these YouTube guys that lie to you. Riddle me that, right? There we go.
Hey, question everything, John. Question everything.
And it's, keep it simple, stupid. Don't, we get all tied up in all this stuff. It's just, it's easy to grow.
And that's the basic, let's look at our camp in Naples. We've got, it's a big side hill, timbered side hill, and we have, three main food plots that Dad and Uncle Mike cut in 20 years ago, 25 years ago that have continued to be our only open green food sources on the property. And with just little tweaking of when we were mowing and when we were overseeding certain things, per John's suggestion to you, Jimmy, the first try at doing it and the first season that we followed through with it, it was a simple planting. Well, I don't even know what it was. It was rye and something else, but basically just overseeded the clover that was in there when you cut it. And that food plot has been money. Like, it's unbelievable how good that's been. It didn't cost us any money.
I started with tilling just because we were kind of at that point where I wanted to freshen up the soil because we haven't really done much with that plot. And I was in a hurry to get it in the ground, and I didn't have time to kind of kill off everything that was there. So I just tilled it up. And then from there, I think you had me use two different kinds of clover and buck forage oats maybe, and maybe a rye. I forget what it was, but there was 2 or 3. Simple, easy combination. Grew fantastic the first fall. And then into the next year, I overseeded that with clover coming into the spring. I was a little late on that. I don't think I technically caught like a frost freeze, but I started, probably in June. I started getting up there and just overseeding and mowing and overseeding and mowing. And then it's actually interesting. That plot where you had me do, I believe it was buck forage oats, that stuff grew up probably 5 foot tall, and it shaded out all the weeds, and the clover still grew underneath it. And I actually, as an experiment, kind of left half and half to see what would happen. I left the tall stuff in one half and not in the other. And I did a last cut, I think, in the beginning of September. And that clover that was shaded all summer freaking popped. And it was like perfect timing for deer season. So I want to try to get something like that going again this year where we got clover underneath and something shading the weeds out up top. But, the other plot I sent John a picture, I want to say in June or early July, and that was like ryegrass, like knee to waist deep. And I went up there with a tiller thinking I was going to till that dead stuff up and just plant new clover for the season. And he was like, no, that's actually pretty good stuff. So I went down and I switched off and I started overseeding clover. I seeded it clover and then I mowed it down on top of it. And by deer season, we had, again, a nice clover patch, and all I did was overseed and mow. So, just playing with simple stuff, not getting crazy with it. I mean, we kind of turned over those 2 plots that I hadn't touched yet this year to decent clover plots. So, yeah, I think going into the spring here, if we keep working at overseeding and frost seeding and doing some stuff, I need to work on blends. I mean, I'm not there with blends yet, but definitely something that I'm excited about to get working on this spring.
Yeah, it's been effective, that's for sure. Now, Dallas, turning to you. Last summer was a big summer, or a big year for us, and for you primarily, doing all that work, planning all this stuff at the farm. So this question was somewhat geared towards you because I wanted to have you share what we're working on. We've got several areas that we're converting over into food sources that were just kind of overgrown pasture and hadn't been worked at all. And I don't know, 10 years at least. So talk about what you did last year with some of these soil building mixes and that you've been purchasing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of mixes, and right now, instead of making my own, I'm just going to Green Cover Seed. I follow a lot of their stuff. I'm pretty confident in their mixes and their quality. Unfortunately, it's a bit expensive to get it shipped from Nebraska, but I love the mixes, and they're all geared towards not just being able to feed deer, but to build soil, and that's really what we're all about. So we're trying to do rotations and trying to, we're just following soil health principles. So we're trying to keep something growing 365 days a year, and we're using varieties. So we're using multi-species mixes, and then we're still rotating in corn and soybeans, but instead of just planting corn into a field and then loading it up with a shit ton of nitrogen to try to get it going for the year, we're using cover crops from the year before, which are a food plot, and then we're planting corn and soybeans into that, and then we're still planting cover crops in on top of that. I talked a little bit about that last year with like interseeding corn and soybeans, and also just you can do that rotation without having to fertilize, and you can still keep a good rotation going, and just have a good variety and be able to and do it. Just right now I'd like to get a drill incorporated, but right now we're just overseeding all of our mixes and small seeds, and then we're using our 2-row corn planter for our corn and soybeans.
Dale's question for you. When you were doing the corn, did you end up using that no-till? Did you use that for going into prior year's cover crop?
So last year was our first year of planting corn. So we had the no-till corn planter, but in reality, if you don't have a lot of vegetation on the surface, there's no real point in a no-till planter. It's just a corn planter, right? So the coulters and the trash whips are for going through all that thick vegetation, and that's what we're going to be doing more of this year. But the year before, we had just like brassicas and soybeans were our cover crop before. So and maybe a little bit of wheat mixed in. So we didn't have to go through any thick vegetation other than some new fields where I went into. And another thing I like to do is take an old pasture or an old field where you've got that thick mat of grass on, you kill that in the spring, and then you drill soybeans right into it. And what's nice about growing soybeans on a fresh plot like that is that you put in Roundup Ready beans, and then you can go over and spray and control your weeds. And then in the fall, you can go ahead and plant your cover crops right into that. You can broadcast right into bare dirt into your soybeans, and then that'll prepare your rotation for the next spring, be it corn or whatever you want to do. But my plan is to set up a rotation of corn where every plot is going to probably have some sort of corn planting in it every other year.
I just want to catch a quick one off of Facebook here on this because it's kind of the same thing in Dallas. I think you tried this last year, but you did corn and you spaced it a little trying to do cover crop in between. Well, we had just a guy ask a question, Kurt here. He said, have you guys ever done corn with cover crops in between? And I know you tried that last year.
Didn't we have a debate on that?
Yeah. We had a debate on it.
And jury says
it worked.
Well or not well?
I think it worked. It worked pretty damn good, I would say.
It's hard to say. The jury's still out a little bit because we have to wait and see what greens up in the spring and how good it grows. But there were some caveats with what I was doing. So what I'm doing is 2 rows of corn and 2 rows of beans, and that allows a lot of extra sunlight to get in there. So the corn isn't shading out either the beans or the other corn or the crops that you have growing underneath. Now, I had more open soil last year because I didn't have that heavy, thick mat laid down over. So this year, any corn or soybeans that I plant are going to have either roller crimped or mowed or some sort of cover crop, a thick mat of seed laid down over top of it, of not seed, vegetation, and plant into that. That'll help suppress weeds, but it'll be harder to broadcast seed into that. So I may have to wait till later in the year or come up with some different way to do that. But generally the principle that I'm talking about, it does work. As long as you keep, I think one of the keys for me was I was actually experimenting with different row widths too, where I had some 30-inch rows of corn and beans and some actually down to 15. But either way, I went no more than 2 rows of corn and then have a space in between and grow soybeans or peas, or you can put whatever you want in there.
Yeah.
But it allows a lot more sunlight to the corn.
I mean, I was talking to you before about I'd rather have, I think this is what I explained the last go around, where, not that this matters at this point, but, multiple, kind of layers where you've got this section and then, that's 20 or 30 foot, 40 foot maybe at the most. And then you've got another 40 foot and them completely segregated. But that's the type of spacing that I'm kind of creating kind of in these designs. And I'm not sure. One other thing I will say is going into the volume of biomass, and like you're talking about I'm doing throw and grow, right? I'm not even using any type of, no-till. But the volume of biomass in your situation, and even in my situation, it's critical. You can get away with a little bit more biomass in your situation because of the no-till, where I have to be almost very regulated and knowledgeable how much biomass I'm going to have coming into the springtime, because I need enough sunlight and enough moisture at that point in time where you can get away with a little bit more. It depends on the seed variety that I'm using, but it's almost like a feel and touch kind of experience thing that's even hard for me to explain to people, now. But one thing I was going to suggest for anybody who's going Dallas's route and doing that, Balanza clover they've been using this on, I'm familiar with a gentleman who does farming this way, and he's not in New York State, but he uses Balanza clover, and the volume and production of clover based on that plant can be a great resource for no-tilling into corn, no-tilling corn into that plant, and then killing that plant at the same time, specifically in the rows. So what they've mounted is actually sprayers onto their no-till. So when they go through it, that row is getting hit, and actually the Balanza clover is alive. It's still developing, and as that corn stubble seed starts to pop up, it's still getting the nutrient benefit because that plant is still photosynthesizing, producing carbon, exchanging, exuding, sugars. It's still functioning in the soil. And as that plant starts to die, that row is sprayed and killed. And this is GMO corn. They could even go back and spray it again. But again, they're no-tilling into the Balanza. And if anybody has an experience with that, I don't know how people go down that road. That's a great, I'm overly impressed with that option, because again, the volume of nitrogen that's resident in the soil based on that particular plant is so much greater than the other sources of nitrogen fixing plants, other clover types or other plants, other legumes. That is probably the best option for people. So consider that. And I don't think you have to put any fertilizer on. That would be my thoughts. Again, if your soil's balanced, right, you've got zinc, boron, right, other micronutrients that need to be in the soil as well. But just from a nitrogen standpoint, sorry, it's just something to consider this year or next year when you get it going.
Yeah,
Balanza clover is not cheap though. That's the other problem.
Balanza's been a part of our fall mixes, but I won't just put in one species. I'm always going to have clovers, brassicas, probably a grass mixed in there like a rye or a wheat, So sure. There's going to be variety, but Balanza and also crimson clover are usually staples of those mixes. But I would say,
try my suggestion though. Try that suggestion. Just do it strip and just see the difference, and go through where you plant. And if you don't have it hooked up, just go with a backpack spray and spray down that strip, and just watch how well that plant does in comparison to your strips where you're doing your multi-species one. Just compare the two from a corn standpoint. Watch your yield difference.
Okay. I would just, for anybody that's their head's spinning right now, what we're talking about here is, especially what I'm talking about, but the principles are regenerative ag. So look up regenerative ag on YouTube and start watching what farmers are doing as far as the variety, the species, the cover crops they're planting. That's what we're doing here. And I'm to the point where if your soil is so bad that you can't get anything to grow, if it's sandy, if it's compacted, if it's been years of tillage and abuse, then you might have to amend your soil and do soil samples and try to get it to a point where it'll grow something. But if you've got soil that'll grow plants, you're doing all right. To me, I don't even do soil samples anymore. We're not adding any fertilizer. We're just using diversity and rotation of crops. If you put corn in, you're going to have to put something else in the next year, because if you try to just keep coming in with more and more corn, all you're going to have to do is keep adding more nitrogen and NPK. So we may spend a little bit more on seed and maybe even chemicals, as far as, I'm trying to get away from having to do very much weed control as far as spraying too, but just diversity and rotation will eliminate a lot of the other things that you have to do as far as getting a food plot to grow.
So we just caught a question from Benjamin on Facebook, saying, with fertilizer and Roundup as high as it's looking like it's going to be, are you guys going to be doing anything different? I think this kind of relates into this, because I know Dallas and I the last couple of years here have been trying to go without that stuff. So like he said, if you look it up on YouTube on regenerative planning, it seems to work pretty good. So I know that's what I'm going to stick with, because that's kind of why I bailed off it last year. That stuff is so expensive. Like Dale said, if you can get the stuff to grow without it, just start getting stuff growing and getting a rotation going and feed the soil yourself over years.
So I'll tell you this, if you want to just get started this year without fertilizer, again, if your soil is anything where you can get anything to grow, one easy way to do it is to just have soybeans planted. I would do it in rows. So get a corn planter or a drill and plant soybeans in rows, and then go ahead and spray your fields. Yeah, Roundup is not super cheap, but it's cheaper than fertilizer. You can get soybeans to grow pretty well anywhere. Now, getting them browsed off by deer is another thing. But get a crop of soybeans going, and then in the fall, in August, that's when you overseed your clovers or your mixes in, and you should be able to get away with little to no fertilizer.
If you're trying to go the non-spray route, you're not going to use any chemicals. It's a little more complicated. I still use chemicals from time to time, but the secret to what I've been doing and the way I've been able to kind of succeed, I think, is I always have, in any of my rotations, I always have at least 60% grass. So there's a grass component, and it's at least 60%. That would be minimum. The problem I have is I don't have the carbon and nitrogen balance that I need to have in my soil. So there's a couple ways to fix that. You could add manure, chicken manure, chicken litter. That would be more of a natural option. You can use manure. Those are fine options. The theory behind regenerative ag, and regardless of what anybody thinks, is we're just trying to build organic material in the soil at a deeper layer. So not just at the two top inches of soil. If it extends, the food source that extends, the available food for your plants extends. That's the focus. So you have to have decomposing material up top and in the ground. And just because you spray it doesn't mean that it's negative on the soil. A lot of times, like glyphosate, it's not as impactful as people feel it is. So, but if you get into a rotation like I'm suggesting, you got to have at least, again, I don't have a no-till drill. If I had a no-till drill, my percentages would be way different. It'd probably be around 35 to 40% grass. And when I talk about grass, in case somebody's not clear, that would be like an oat or a wheat or, winter rye. So, it's going to be an annual. All right. So we're going to start with annuals, and I'm going to stick with annuals. I still have perennials in certain areas. And what you end up having to do in my situation is you actually have to have perennial plants, perennial clovers in my rotations. That's how I have a nitrogen balancing scheme. So it's not ideal. I wish I had a no-till drill, but I'm not going to spend money on it, and I can do it a cheap way. And there's a lot more to soil than just the plants that we're using. You've got to feed. If you listen to these guys, like there's a guy named Jason Snavely, he makes it sound like hocus pocus, and I'm not trying to pick on him, but I'm only saying that because it's not just about the plants. Your geology, the componentry, everything that's in your soil, there's a lot more there, and either you have it or you don't. And if you don't have one, atom of something, I don't want to, like for apples, to build apples, you have to have arsenic. Arsenic is a key component to building apples. If you don't have arsenic in your soil, you won't have good apples. People think of arsenic as a poison. It's an atom that's essential for apple development. So there's a lot more to the soil than we think about. And it's just, I'll get off my high horse, but this has been stuff that I've been working on for years now. And I'm just, there's a lot more to this whole process, so have fun with it. Don't make it too serious either.
Yeah.
This is just,
well, that's why this is always the topic that ends up taking the most time and has the most people asking questions, because it's something that if you turn on the Outdoor Channel or you watch YouTube, you got to buy, Whitetail Institute, Clover Plus or whatever, and that's the only way you're going to kill big deer, So, but when you really get down to brass tacks, there's a lot of really simple things you can do, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to soil. It all comes down to what you're working with. So, I love this discussion because every time we have it, something else comes up and you learn something. And I think if we were to go back and listen to last year's discussion about this, we've come, just speaking with my two properties with Jimmy and our side, and then Dallas with my in-laws, the properties have come a long way in 1 year just off of the things that we've learned and we've implemented from these discussions. So it's good, valuable stuff.
Yeah.
And
the only reason I brought that up at the end, because I'm not trying to bash on that consulting,
you kind of did.
It's a riddling thing. We make it a riddling thing, and the plant is only going to be as healthy as the soil is. So you can go through the process of just creating plant, and I did this for 7 years. I can get in this rotation, it works well, but am I really attracting or creating as much nutrients as I can in that plant, that output? And there's ways to measure that now. They have tools now to measure that. And beyond that, and that are instantaneous, I can use them in the field. It's not measuring CO2 that comes out of the ground. That's like hocus pocus. That doesn't allow you to make changes to your process. And so what I'm suggesting is, the geology, the nutrients in the soil, that builds very nutrient-rich plants, that sucks deer off your neighbor's property, and that's the goal. There's a reason why on 50 acres I'm able to kill big bucks and my neighbors can't, because I'm doing everything that they're not doing. And that's one of the key components, is I have very nutrient-dense plants because of the way I'm amending my soil. And I'm not using nitrogen or unnatural sources of potassium or phosphate. I'm using all natural sources. So it's just like, I'm not using any fertilizer you go buy at the store. I go up to a mill. There's just way more to this than I want people to recognize. And it's like, if you want to compete with your neighbors and you want to do this, because it's like, I'm dealing with clients who are constantly trying to screw their neighbors. So, and I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
How do I beat my neighbor?
I don't know any of those people.
Right. And I'm not trying to screw my neighbor. I'm just trying to win in this game of, design. And I'm telling you, there's more to it, but keep it simple. Like I said earlier, do what Dale said, keep it simple blends. Best blend I use is oats, peas, and buckwheat. That's my spring blend. Been using that for a long time. It's a little complicated, more complicated now, but that's pretty much what I've used for years. Works well.
And I was going to say something, but that just would take the conversation in the wrong direction.
It's funny because you say have fun with it and don't make it complicated. Like, I had it about as basic as you could get it last year when I was just trying to juvenate the 2 plots. I was just literally going up there when the weeds got high, throwing in clover and mowing it down, trying to leave the clover that's there. I'm not trying to mow it right down, but just cutting off the weeds up high and dropping all that stuff over the new clover seed. And you know, in a matter of 3 months, they were all pretty plush clover plots. So you ain't got to kill yourself. It's fun getting out on the tractor and mowing. I mean, I had a great time doing it, and it turned around pretty quick, just in a simple aspect of mowing and seeding.
Pertinent. All right, we're moving on. John, since you were so long-winded, I mean, now we're over our time, so we're probably going to lose 3/4 of our listeners.
Actually, we're just gaining them.
Really? I think
Yeah.
people are finally getting into their second cocktail of the night, and they want to hear what we're talking about. Renting. This is a topic we kind of already covered. Topic 3, so I'm just going to pass over that. That was ideas for protecting your trees and crops while they're growing. I think we kind of talked a little bit about that. You know, you can kind of do that a bit with tree tubes and different things. We're not going to dive into that one right now. I want to talk about equipment. You know, so we were just talking. You know, like John, you don't have a no-till drill. You don't have a planter. You're doing a lot of this stuff just by broadcasting. But I think there's a lot of interesting options out there for people to rent or borrow or get equipment that you don't want to spend $10,000, $15,000 on for a one-day piece of work you're doing. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about this. And I know, Ben, I want to start with you on this because just this past weekend, you rented a piece of equipment with a client and got some work done. So I think this is something that people should really look into because I think it's a maybe a decent cost-effective option to get work done quick and not have to, you know, take a 72-month loan on a piece of equipment. So let her rip.
Yeah, so actually that was on my family's personal property, and we didn't actually go the rental route. We actually went with the hired route. Just happened to be with the way pricing worked out and everything like that. He was coming back from a job. I saved on trucking. He's a fairly local guy. I wanted to be able to use him as a resource too, so I wanted to give him basically a tryout. And those forestry mulchers are a heck of a piece of equipment for clearing mostly invasive shrubs was what it was clearing. Buckthorn and honeysuckle. It was an animal on that stuff. Going more with that mulcher route versus that like front mounted brush hog or something like that. That gets right down in the soil. He can work it and backblade it, and it works right out of the root. I mean, it's a really, really, you know, good piece of equipment. I was very impressed with it. I mean, for a half a day, we did, let's say, probably a little over an acre and a half, I would say, and a 4-hour day. And that's from drop off to reloading the piece of equipment. And that's basically maybe depends on what and how it comes back. That'll just be a basic annual plot this year, if it does get seeded down to anything. But yeah, it's like bare dirt ready to go. I mean, if you guys have seen the pictures, it's night and day difference.
Yeah.
But
I got a question for you, Ben.
Yeah.
You said that actually the way he did it was he went right into the soil and was taking out the roots.
Oh yeah. Yep. So what he does is I didn't really get a good video of it because if you're in the front of it, you're in the splash zone. So that's not the best place to be taking a video when they're ripping on that. So what he'll do is he'll go through the area, depends on the size of the brush, and then he'll drop that right down in, and it's literally like a tub style like stump grinder, and he'll put that and he'll bury that right in for the first 3 or 4 inches, and then he'll backblade basically everything he just did and basically use it like a rototiller to crunch up any of that root collar that's right there in that first couple inches of soil.
So, I mean, I'm a little familiar with these. I've used them on a few jobs. I guess my question for you is, and I don't, what do you think is going to happen in some of those areas where you did that? Do you think you'll get some of those plants coming back, and will you have to do any work? What do you think?
Depending on, I guess, species, stuff like that, areas where there might have been a little bit of dogwood component with that, I could see some volunteer sprouting and stuff like that. It just, I guess, depends on how much of that root collar really got disturbed with it. Honeysuckle, maybe not as much, but again, it is a dormant season, utilization. But a couple of the areas were a little softer, so I needed to get into them before we lost the snowpack. So it's a good question. I've never used one of them specifically or had one of them really done on a, to this scale. I've seen people use the brush hog heads, and it's been somewhat productive, but just not, it doesn't seem like as thorough a job as that mulcher head does. But I'll be posting updates on it, and I don't sugarcoat or anything like that. If I say it didn't work out and I would recommend going a different route with it, or I had to treat extra for this species X that came up or whatever it might be. We'll see with it.
I think can I just my experience real quick from that standpoint is the mulch on the flip side of it. If the mulch stays, I get a little bit longer before I have to do any work to it. And the mulch is actually my friend in that situation. Which if you're creating a food plot, you don't want. I mean, you want ground, so you're almost rather work it in, right? I mean, that was kind of your theory? I'm thinking.
So I mean, it's not a very dense mulch layer because it was mostly shrubby material. There wasn't a whole lot of, I guess.
Timber?
No, not at all. No,
Okay.
it was mixed, I guess, shrub ground. I mean, maybe we took down some ash trees that were on their way out that just were in the way. But other than that, closest thing to a tree would have been some of the buckthorn that came out. But most of it was honeysuckle, and a lot of the pockets and stuff like that. So
Cool.
not like a layer of mulch like you would maybe see like you said in a forestry setting or something like that. No, these were knocked into kind of shrubland area.
Cool. Interesting.
I'm so loaning equipment. So isn't there? I think we've talked about that on here. Can you guys either Ben, John, anybody have experience with like cooperative extension type stuff where you can get a drill, anything like that? Equipment to use on your tractor at little or no cost. Is that a thing either one of you have experience with?
I do. I didn't use it we used it on client's property. They rented a no-till from the county. I forget what we paid per acre, but it was like dirt cheap. I want to say it was like, I don't know, $20 an acre planted. I mean, it was so inexpensive for a $20,000 machine. It was hydraulic. He had to have a big tractor, which he did, and he had to have hydraulic hookup. I mean, that was, 20,000 versus, I don't know what he spent, $100. I mean, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So my tractor's not big enough, so I've been able to do it. I don't have a hydraulic hookup. I only got a 50 horse. But for where he was at, he needed 75 horse, and but yeah, I think your county should have some of those, as a resource for you. If they don't, then maybe another county does, and maybe you could work out a deal where they're shipping over. You just have to deal with competing interests if somebody beats you to it. That's the only issue that I didn't have that issue in this situation, but some people don't know about that as a resource. So they go out and buy a no-till drill. They buy one of those Genesis, they're like 10 grand. I don't know. I mean, I think that's a better option depending on the size of your tractor. Although the Genesis, you can mount with 3-point hitches. You can go in different places, whether it's, a Genesis or another brand. I don't mean Genesis specifically. I would use a Great Plains before I buy Genesis, 10 times over, because I've got more experience with them and I've seen them not have as many issues on harder ground. So that's a recommendation if anybody's buying equipment. I'm not bashing Genesis. I mean, if somebody gave me one, I'd use it.
No, you kind of are. No. Oh God. Yeah. So that's what I kind of want to get into. I think there's some great options out there to, rent labor from someone who has the equipment, or you can actually find a way to actually get it at little or no cost through, your county, quite possibly. And that's something that Dallas and I have been talking quite a bit about this winter is, daydreaming about, can we find one that we can, get access to for a weekend and or a couple days during the week that we can get over to the farm and get a bunch of work done and do what we want to do without having to bust out the wallet and spend a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, I mean, you could just run a walk-behind brush cutter for a lot of this stuff too. I don't know what they run a day anymore, but it's not too expensive. You get a lot of work done on one of those if you don't have a tractor. I did that for a long time. You can. I'm renting equipment. I'm actually renting equipment this year to do some work on property, to remove saplings on a property. I'm running a big buzz cutter.
Cool.
So, I mean, I run stuff. I mean, I'm just like everybody else.
Well, with you doing work on properties farther away too, I mean, even if you had a big tractor, you'd have to consider how you'd get the tractor there or different equipment to a place. So you've always got to be resourceful on that sort of thing. So
yeah, if I'm going to give a day's labor, I'm usually cutting timber. Like, I just did a job 2 weeks ago and I was just cutting timber. I'm going back. I'm cutting more timber up there. I mean, I enjoy cutting timber, but it's usually chainsaw work that I'm doing, and I enjoy it. But I'm starting to get a little. I don't have the same agility that I used to a few years ago. I'm almost 40, so I'm getting a little cross injuries have crept up on me. I mean, some of you guys.
You look good though. I mean, when I met you, you're a bigger guy than I thought. I thought you were gonna be this little cute little guy, a little like midfield lacrosse player. No, you're a big dude.
Oh, I played defense in college. Man.
Oh, you had the long stick, huh? You're whacking the boys, were you? Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an awkward laugh. That means that you just blinked twice.
Why
Yeah.
did you think I would be a little guy?
I don't know. You just kind of like had that look, like you just kind of like stocky, maybe short man syndrome or something. I don't know, but you're not. It's not at all what you are. I'm excited about that because, other than the fact that I'm skinny, we're about the same person. So, I love that. I love that discussion about minus the fact I'm nowhere near as intelligent as you are. I'm just really good at talking and saying stupid shit. My cat's on my lap. Excuse me. So that's kind of where I was getting at there, and I think the caveat to that is cost sharing. Something that we did last year as we went in and we talked about this last year as well, and kind of report back on how that all worked out. We bought a 2-row corn planter, Dallas, and that was what, $3,700 ish. No, more?
That was less than that.
It was less than that. Well, so we bought it. I'll let you kind of speak to the whole gist of it, but we bought that. We shared it amongst everybody. And I would say, looking back and looking forward, I think it worked out pretty damn well. And everybody got what they wanted out of the equipment during the summer. And all parties were happy. So I don't know if you want to speak to that at all. But good experience. I think that's a good option for people.
Yeah, those 2-row. Actually, you can get a 1, 2, 3, or 4-row planter, and the corn planter side, they're pretty nice. I mean, they're definitely, you can't do the same thing you can with a drill, but they're just a lot less expensive. They get the different people cut down the John Deere corn planters and make them into 3-point hitch mounted. The 2-row seems to be the most common. That's what we bought, but you get a bare bones for like $2,000 and then split it between a few people if you want. But even $2,000 is not an entry point where you couldn't get in if you have a tractor. I mean, you got to have a 45 horse tractor, but I mean, it worked out great for us. Like I say, that we haven't tried it into any really thick vegetation with as far as the no-till setup, but it's got the no-till trash whips and coulters on it, so I expect that's going to work good too. So, like I said, I'd still rather have a drill, but the one thing you can do with a corn planter is plant corn. I mean, you could plant corn with a drill, but you'd have to maybe block off rows or whatever. So, I don't know. It's a good mid-priced option to go with, I would say.
Yeah.
To me, I want to have corn as part of my food plots. That's just, you look right now, this winter when we had 18 inches of snowpack, the only thing above the ground that they could easily get to was that corn,
And where were they? They were just filing morning and night.
Corn. They couldn't get to the brassicas and the soybeans. They could get to that corn though.
Yep. Yeah, it was awesome. And then doing that cost sharing, I would highly recommend it if you've got a close group of friends, if it's family, especially if the equipment can be stored close and be shared between properties in a close proximity, so you don't have to haul it around too far. It worked out great for us. Everybody, I think we could all look back at this past summer and say it worked out great. We, Dallas, I didn't help the other guys, and I think you did. I think you worked with them a little bit to help them do their planning. So it was kind of a mutually exclusive situation where everybody benefited from it. And we planted corn, beans, and quite a bit of sunflowers with that, if I remember correctly, and it worked fantastic. So, it's an awesome tool, and you can definitely, you can do that with any type of equipment, but we did it with that 2-row planter, and it worked out pretty awesome. So, that's it. That was our 5 questions. I know I had one. I want to hit on this quick. Frost seeding timing. Can anybody speak to that? successful timing of doing a frost seeding? Anybody?
I like doing it before, we really get, I guess before the snow all goes away. Sometimes it's nice to be able to see it, but at the same time, I don't really like frost seeding with like 10 inches of snow, because if you get a big melt off, I've ended up with some really, really thick patches of clover in the corners of my fields and the low points of my fields. So I think there's still some time in there for freeze and thaw. I mean, tonight we're going to be probably down into where you're going to get some freezing stuff. I mean, we were cutting down trees at work today, and we were able to get in there and get some of the logs out for firewood, actually, and stuff like that. Not let it go to waste in the woods, but it was hard enough to get in there with our toolcat and stuff like that to get some timber out. So firewood, not timber, but firewood. But so you're getting some of that freeze thaw right now. I mean, if you look out in like bare dirt ground right now, and if you see like those heaves, those little icicles in the morning, you're getting the right conditions for frost seeding, for sure. So and the majority of that snowpack is obviously off, so you're not going to get huge runoff issues. So just look for those temperatures dropping down into the high 20s and warming up during the day up into the upper 30s, and perfect conditions.
Yeah, I was wondering if this was too early, because obviously you're starting to see the snow melt off, and with what we have coming here, it's showing, our ground's pretty bare, and we're looking at 3 to 5 inches on Saturday. And I was wondering if it would be beneficial to get it down before that, if that would help work it into the ground at all, or if it's a waste.
So it depends on I would say your slope would be it's the texture of the soil, what materials resident on the soil, and the slope of your soil. Those are all the decision factors that go into making the decision to seed or frost seed. So I typically don't frost seed on heavy pack, ice, any of that type of stuff. It just creates too much dispersion. Today we got 5 inches of snow in Tully, central New York. So it's fluffy snow. I wouldn't be opposed to doing it on fluffy snow. That's just my opinion on flat ground. And it depends on the rain, the volume of rain that we're going to get over the next couple weeks. So if you have an indicator next week, you're going to have heavy rains. Those are things that I watch for, is what's the rain level going to be, and then what's the texture of my soil. Again, if you have sometimes you don't have it. Like, again, if you're going in, it's a brassica plot and it's very bare, the material is kind of all decomposed and it's slopey, I would be cautious, unless you felt like you had a good window where there's freeze and thaw, and that seed would basically kind of get into those pores of the soil without being washed away, if that makes sense. Like that, looking at the specific application, saying that's how I do it, I would say that would be my recommendation. If you have like soil, like I'm going to go up and I'm actually going to frost seed switchgrass up on my land. I think I got a couple pounds of it, and it's really dry ground there. I'm absolutely going to do it now. It's dry. It's relatively flat on these knolls that I'm working in. These are embedding areas. So I'm putting switchgrass inside bedding areas, screening, and I'm gonna do it. I would have done it today if I was not on a client property. I would have done it in the snow today, and actually it would have been awesome, because the birds are like, robins are back. I mean, there's a lot of birds back, and I'm like, they'll never find this. This is the perfect situation. So I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking about today. So I'm a little bit all over the place with it, but just look at your soil, right? Just read the soil. Just be practical about it.
One with the soil.
Be one. That's how you kill big bucks, man.
That's right. Naked.
You got to be the bullet, Jimmy.
Yep. Be the bullet.
Be the bullet.
Yep.
Big Jim was the bullet at the end of season last year.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas, I got a question for you on that planter that you got. And we talked last year about it, and I'm just interested because I know like it's a cost-effective option for a lot of people, and like having the no-till, like I'm envious. I kind of want to buy one. I don't know if I'm going to, but I told you last year I wanted to buy one. Not going through heavy material yet. If you were just a bedding person and just assuming like, I don't know, like your biomass that you're going to be planting into, but let's just say it's like a fallow field, for an example, and you're doing the beans. Like, are you at all concerned? Well, Beans, not as much. Corn, I'm definitely more concerned with. Are you concerned about your depth levels? I mean, do you think you have enough weight, just the unit alone, weight-wise? Are you adding weight to it? Can you add and subtract weight? I mean, have you thought through that a little bit, just so you get the depth you think you need? I'm just wondering where your head's at.
So there's the spring depth settings on it, and that seemed to work well enough last year, because you want corn at about 2 inches and soybeans can be about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep. You don't want your soybeans as deep, but corn, the depth is more important. But there is space to add weight if you want to do that. So it's 3-point hitch, but there's you got your seed box in front, and then we initially got fertilizer boxes in the back, and we ended up taking them off. We didn't like them, didn't need them. So there's room to strap down weight there if you wanted, if you are concerned about the weight. The little concern we had was that we have our plots aren't real smooth. They're kind of a lot of little rolly spots. So the planter kind of rides up with the tractor, as opposed to, like, most guys who are planting corn, they've got a hitch and wheel mounted system. So that alone will follow the contour of the ground. But if you're 3-point hitch mounted, you kind of have that little bit of rock. But, this goes back to the whole net loss thing, right? So there's a lot of stuff we've been talking about today is that if you miss a few spots of corn, or, if you don't have your soil quite right and your corn net's 100 bushel instead of 150, in the end, it's okay. It's not really that, but it's a net loss in the end anyways, right? So, but it does work good. I mean, we were definitely happy with it. And as far as the no-till thing, yeah, if you don't have deep vegetation, just the double disc openers are going to slice right into the ground, and that's what's opening up the ground anyways. The no-till stuff is really just to get the vegetation out of the way. There's guys around here that are planting their corn and beans with a conventional planter, and they're no-till planting. There's actually farmers doing that now.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that.
A lot of people don't realize that's really, as long as you don't have super rocky or super thick vegetation, you really don't even need, on that style of planter, you don't really need anything additional. And like I said, if you don't get the no-till or the fertilizer options on there, if you just go with the straight corn planter, I think you can get one of those 2 rows for about $2,000. So, certainly if you're tilling your ground, that's all you need. I don't recommend that, but even if you just have, like I say, the fields we had last year that were just the dead grass from the year before that I sprayed off ahead of time, you didn't even need the trash whips for that. You could just slice right into that stuff. And I tried it actually the year before. I planted some soybeans that way with my cousin's his conventional corn planter too, and it worked just fine. So
It's a great option, a less expensive option for a lot of people. So I think it's cool.
Troy Kilborn weighed in on this too. He said, just simply put, now through April, frost seeding can be effective. Like John said, snowpack is a big thing. Like if you're here, in south of the thruway, really, you're fine now. But if you go up north, like where my in-laws are around Tug Hill and the Adirondacks, I mean, there's still a ton of snow, and I don't think it would be beneficial. And it's layered snow. It's not just, 4 foot of powder. It's probably 3 foot of hard pack base still. So I think putting seed on top of that would be pointless. But, anything down in our area now, you're probably fine.
Or Tully. Tully's rough out here.
Yeah.
Stuff out here.
It's Tug Hill South. When you got that northwest wind, Tug Hill South. All right, you guys feeling good? Do we have any other questions that we're kicking there that we could grab, or?
There was one there on Facebook that I didn't throw in yet because it didn't really relate to anything, but Bo Hunt was asking our thoughts on creating bedding areas on property lines.
Oh, I don't think we should dig into that. Should we?
Well, I mean, it's more of an opinion thing
Okay.
than how to do it. It's just kind of what are your thoughts on it?
Okay. Well, John, let's try to keep this under 42-minute answer. What are your thoughts on that?
I've done it. It just depends on the neighbor setting. Is it a friend or a foe? So that's reason one. How does it relate to maybe your hunting abilities on the property? Maybe you have a depth issue where you don't have a whole lot of space. You have a smaller property. I have bedding areas that are adjacent to my neighbor's lines on my own property. That's because it's hard for them to access it without blowing out the deer. So they put themselves in probably the pinnacle of being a problem in the area. So they produce a negative stimuli that benefits my property. I have layering bedding areas across my property. It pushes deer more into my property. I have food plots in the center of my property. So, everything that you listen to, the riddling things that go on YouTube, like, break the rules. Like, just because the bedding area is adjacent to a neighbor property may not be a bad thing. A food plot in the center of a property may not be a bad thing. Apply, some real, rigorous, thought through, evaluated, criteria to your design and make it work for your situation. That would be my best recommendation. So don't be opposed to trying something different. But, it's hard to, once you cut heavy in an area, it's going to be a long time till it comes back. So I guess proceed with caution if you're unsure. Or hire a consultant that would help you learn how to do this. I will save you I'm not plugging myself because this could be Ben, this could be anybody who does this.
No, you kind of are. No.
This is crazy. So I've been traveling all over the place, right? So now I'm back in New York, and New York is a funny town. You got to be a bird from New York to know how New Yorkers work. These guys spend $200,000-$300,000 in these hunting properties, and to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, even $10,000. I've got clients spend a lot, $20,000 or $50,000 a year, right? Okay, it's a lot of money they're spending. It to me, an equipment or consultant may be spending $10,000 or $20,000. Okay, so the guys are willing to spend that kind of money. It's a drop in the bucket to the investment you just made on your property. I mean, a drop in the bucket. It's insane to me that this is even a questionable discussion point of some. And again, it's just people being cheap and not utilizing your resources, to your best advantage. I think we would save you years in time, and I think that's important to people. And I think people should start thinking that way, because I go to all these other states and they're like, it's totally different. It's a totally different world. And I would you'll save yourself thousands of dollars by spending $1,000 or $2,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 on a consultant. It's just worth it. So
Yep.
bow hunt, that's my recommendation to you.
And heard that. Great point, Ben, or John, excuse me. Ben, where I was going to go before John went where he went there is, what's your favorite thing to focus on? It's access, right? So access is everything. So when I started thinking about, as John was talking, I'm thinking about Bo's question, think about your property, think about where your access is from and where the deer want to be. And I'm thinking about our situation with my in-laws' property, with Dallas's family land, is that the best bedding is at two property corners, two different landowners. Ours, on our property, there's fantastic bedding, but there's two lines. And it's going to be hard to fight that. So in a way, we're embracing that. That's where we want the deer, but we want them to spend more time on our side of that bedding instead of being on our neighbor's bedding. Not that we're trying to keep the deer legitimately off our neighbor's property, but we want them to have what they need on the piece, the best that we can control it. So, I mean, Ben, you agree with that? Access is huge, because if your access doesn't work for it, then you're up the creek without a paddle.
Right. So it's really easy. And as you're saying this and John's talking about this, it's really easy to take this picture frame behind me. And I think this is a real good example of it. If you draw a square of a property and say you access around the outside, you put everything on the inside, you can make that work. It's a picture frame. How many properties, John, do you go on that are a picture frame? One? Maybe?
Yeah, very rarely.
Very, very rarely. Most of the time it's, you gotta, like you said, Bill, maybe it's you split it in half and you treat it like two different parcels. My east side of my property is like that. I have to treat my east side like two different parcels just because of access. You know, it might just be a right of way into some of these properties. That might be the only way you get in. It might be that the access, like you said, is buried on that far side where, you know, away from your access. Sorry, your bedding is built away from your access just because of the way it lays out, different habitat features. I mean, it's really easy to take a paintbrush and just make big, broad brush strokes and say, just do everything around the outside, you know, focus everything on the inside. It doesn't work that way with 99% of it. So just looking about how it lays out, you know, do everything, plan with a purpose, and, you know, tying it back into even the food plot thing. It's more important about where you're planting and when you're planting than what you're planting. I tell people a lot of times. So it all comes back to, like we say, I guess I beating the dead horse with my 2 cents over here, but inflation's going up, so it's probably worth 3 now. But yeah, I think access is you got to build everything around it, and it's not just you got to go around the outside. You know, think outside the box a little bit with it, like John was saying too.
Yep.
Just when you consider access and bedding and food, just the one thing we didn't mention here is wind direction, predominant winds. That's really the most important factor in all of this. It's, you know, access is where you can get to the property from too, but think about the wind direction, you know, as far as putting a bedding area on your neighbor's property, you know, if they're going to disturb the deer, I guess either way you look at it, who's going to benefit more? You know, it's not just the fact that you want to put it there. It's, do the deer want to be there? And then how are you going to hunt it? And is it going to help you or hurt you? But to me, the biggest factor is always wind direction.
Yep. And it's
predominant wind direction. Here we get south and west winds mostly 80% of the time.
And it's having those discussions and those relationships with your neighbors so that everybody understands what the block is trying to achieve, what that area is trying to achieve. Because if you're doing something and your neighbor's doing the opposite and they're just pissing in their Wheaties every day, you're not accomplishing nothing. So I'm going to kind of round out the discussion there. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. I want to thank Ben and John, Big Jim and Dallas for you guys jumping on and helping answer some of these questions. And, you know, closing this out, talking about access, I think is a beautiful way to close this out. And I will tell everybody, you got to go listen to John's podcast episode from this week. I shit you not, John, that took so much from that discussion and so many little things that, like, applied to all the different types of property that I hunt and the things that we're actively doing on the landscape. So, you know, I appreciate the work you're doing with your podcast. You've got some really great guests that are coming on there. And, you know, Ben, I appreciate the work you're doing, not just with your Old Tin Cup stuff, but the stuff with NDA. And it's been a lot of fun to continue to build our relationships with each other, but not just the community out there. And hoping we're bringing some good education and information to everybody, as well as entertaining you a little bit. So appreciate everybody.
Ben, I gotta get you on my podcast.
Okay.
Don't be stealing our tea, guys.
This is awkward. What about me? What about me?
Like I said, John, I'm getting expensive now with inflation. It's up to 3 cents, you know, for my thoughts. So,
man, all right, fine.
No, anytime, man. I'd love to.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this all out as I go. I'd like to have you on.
John's got a lot of reoccurring guests, and most of them aren't any of us, so that's fine. We're not going to look into that at all. It's okay. I'll keep having you on, though, John. I appreciate you. All right. Thanks, everybody. Uncle Dallas, have a nice night at work.
Yep, will do.
All right. Feed him, everybody.
See you guys.
See you.
See you.